Lucille Lesueur, you have been placed under contract, MGM Studio, stop. 6-month option, stop. $75 a week, stop. Leave immediately for California, stop.
Before the bright lights of fame shined upon her, Joan Crawford had danced her way across dimly lit nightclubs in Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago, renowned for her Charleston, to one of cinema's greatest dramatic actresses. But when she first stepped into Hollywood, Crawford confessed to feeling self-conscious, and her style was, in her words, quote, simply dreadful. So she stood tall and dared people to notice her. With just a 6-month contract at MGM, the clock was ticking. Joan knew she had to prove herself or face the harsh reality of being dropped by the studio. In the bustling business of Hollywood, which Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer had taken over a decade earlier, competition was fierce. The day after her arrival at MGM, Joan Crawford had her first screen test. She noted how crew members, particularly the cameramen, were her guiding lights, encouraging her to conquer her fear of the camera. Although Joan also never got to actually see her own screen test. Joan was a dancer at heart, not yet an actress. Within a week, Joan found herself in front of a camera, not for motion pictures, but the still camera as the, quote, action queen of cheesecake, like Greta Garbo had been. She posed for promotional photos, throwing herself into action shots. The publicity department loved this as they showcased her athleticism and flexibility and often sent her to the beach, an excuse for the studio to dress her in bathing suits. She mentions one unforgettable moment in her autobiography titled A Portrait of Joan, when the studio had her photographed stopping traffic at 7th and Broadway wearing a traffic cop hat. The photographs were a hit and were reprinted in newspapers around the country. Joan was in pictures, yes, but not motion pictures. She aspired to be more than just a pretty face in photos. She became a student of her craft, eager to learn the art of becoming an actress, a dancing actress, she thought. Joan's silver screen debut came in February 1925 as the uncredited double of Norma Shearer in the silent film Lady of the Night. Norma plays Molly, a, quote, girl from the streets who is getting out of reform school, while Florence, also Norma, is graduating. You could only see her for a few seconds in the film.
As a matter of fact, my first appearance before the moving camera was anonymous. I doubled for Norma Shearer in her dual role in Lady of the Night. This was the story of a reform school graduate and a judge's daughter, both in love with the same young inventor. Full face, there's no resemblance between Norma and me, but our profiles did look somewhat alike. While Norma played the tough girl, full front close-up, I played the lady, with my back to the camera. When she did the lady, I was the tough girl, with my back to the camera. Between times, I tried to watch everything Norma did, for she was that wonderful being, a star. Also, she dated Irving Thalberg, who was in charge of studio production. Thalberg would come by the set occasionally, a cool-looking, dark young man who tossed a gold coin in the air, tossed it, with such concentration that you never dared speak to him. I didn't envy Norma, but I did long for a friend at court. She had Thalberg. Marion Davies had Mr. Hearst. Jeanette MacDonald had a good education and a hard-working mother. Well...
Just a few months later, Joan made her second uncredited appearance in Proud Flesh, released in April 1925. The film starred Eleanor Boardman, Pat O'Malley, and Harrison Ford. Joan could be seen in hearty scenes in the film and noted her friendship with Eleanor. Her journey continued with more uncredited roles, such as a mannequin in A Slave to Fashion starring Norma Shearer again, and Joan's close friend William Haynes, which was released in August 1925. 2 days later, The Merry Widow was released, with Joan playing an uncredited ballroom dancer in the film. It wasn't until September 1925 she received her first credited role as Bobby under her birth name Lucille Lesueur. Pretty Lady starred Zazu Pitts, Lillian Tashman, and featured Tom Moore and Norma Shearer. Pretty Ladies originally had a musical color sequence, however, that is now considered lost. Jo can be seen when there is a chorus in the film or in her 2 scenes with the star. This was the first and only time she was billed under her birth name, though she previously modeled in a 1925 MGM promotional film.
Carrie Wilson cast me, at Mr. Rapf's suggestion, as Miss MGM, introducing a sales film which would show clips from forthcoming MGM attractions to exhibitors at the annual convention. The opening shot was of me, all legs, in high-heeled black patent leather pumps. No acting ability needed. But I liked Mr. Wilson, and he became one of my self-appointed guardian angels. Later, he told me why. He was used to girls in what he calls the Hollywood pattern. Brassy exteriors, a vamp technique, and the ability to scheme, plan, and finagle to get ahead. You were different. You were just plain scared to death, he told me years later. My own first picture was Pretty Ladies, with Seizu Pitts and Lillian Tashman. Myrna Loy and I were chorus girls. We sat on blocks of ice, some melted faster than others, all done up in marabou, in imitation snow. We had no lines to speak. I was strictly a mummy with big eyes, watching everything. This was Metro's answer to a series of glorified Follies films Florin Ziegfeld had been signed to do for famous players. Seizu was the human interest. Myrna and I were background. In one scene, we were Japanese ladies, and in the piece de résistance, we were clinging tenaciously to a chandelier of living statues high on a Cedric Gibbons set, while down below, young director, Montabelle, brooded over the effect. I kept on clinging tenaciously, not only to the chandelier, but to my job at the studio.
Following Pretty Ladies, Joan would go on to play a small part in the film The Circle, also released in September. She played the role of young Lady Catherine in the first few minutes. In her autobiography, she confesses she doesn't remember this role, confusing it with The Only Thing starring Eleanor Boardman and Conrad Nagel, where she appears as an extra in the crowd scenes.
The next picture I remember nothing about, The Only Thing, starring Eleanor Boardman, who was on her way to the top. I thought she was there already. It was based on an Eleanor Glynn novel about a mythical kingdom and a beautiful princess betrothed to an old king. I played the part of young Lady Catherine, which must have been one of those bits I was begging so hard for that Jack Conway tossed me this tiny morsel to keep me from hounding his office.
Released the following month in October, The Midshipman is a romantic drama that centers on Naval Academy upperclassman James Randall and his love interest Patricia Lawrence. Joan has only a brief comedic appearance in this film with a ghostly encounter. For the first time, the newly named Joan Crawford was billed as Joan Crawford in the silent film Old Clothes, a sequel to the then popular film The Rag Man. She plays the role of Mary Riley, though she was only initially hired to teach the star Jackie Coogan how to Charleston.
My first real part was in Old Clothes, produced by Jack Coogan Sr., and starring Jackie, the child with the great black eyes, who could walk about with his hands behind his back and melt everyone's heart. For this picture, there was a tryout of 150 girls. We were lined up, turned profile, and tested. I got the part of Mary Riley, the girl who mothers the waif. Mine was a small part, but I took it big. I'd sit listening to the musicians in a coma of concentration. Director Eddie Klein'd smile around his cigar. "You'd think this scene was the most important thing in your life, girl." It was. But that first part was a break for me. Jackie's father, Mr. Coogan, believed I'd make good and was kind enough to tell me so. Besides, Jackie was such a big star. Old Clothes received a great deal of publicity, and I got my picture in the papers. But you can't eat publicity, and I was hungry. For excitement, for fun, for people, for work. I simply hadn't work enough.
By November 1925, Joan Crawford had a small part in almost 10 films. But it wasn't until December she obtained her first breakout role as Irene in Sally, Irene, and Mary. Set in New York, it follows a journey of 3 friends from the Lower East Side to becoming Broadway chorus girls. The film starred Constance Bennett as Sally and Sally O'Neill as Mary. The George Eastman Museum restored this film in 2018 with funding from the Louis B. Mayer Foundation.
One night, director Edmund Goulding saw us at the Grove. He said that when I Charlestoned, it was as if I were intoxicated with joy. It was joy. I never touched liquor. I barely touched earth. "That girl's under contract to us, isn't she?" Mr. Goulding said. "Well, she's a natural. She's Irene." He was speaking of the forthcoming production, Sally, Irene, and Mary, for which a lavish set was already being built for a full-stage Charleston number. Constance Bennett had drawn the role of Sally. Sally O'Neill would play Mary. We were 3 hard-working, ambitious youngsters in the script, earning a living in a chorus and coming home at night to corned beef and cabbage. It was a good picture of backstage chorus girl life with bits of comedy and pathos, and the characters made sense. This had been my old life. As it turned out, Sally, Irene, and Mary was the beginning of my new life, and my new name. Crawford. Crawford! It sounds like crawfish, I mourned. "You're lucky it isn't cranberry," Willie Haynes said. "You could be dished up every Thanksgiving with the turkey." And he promptly dubbed me Cranberry, which he calls me to this day. But Joan Crawford I was. My name was changed on 2 unreleased pictures, and there it appeared every day on the call sheet. I plucked my eyebrows wide apart, fashioned my mouth into a coy Cupid's bow. Director Goulding insisted my hair be parted in the middle, and I wept while Edith Hubner did it. I thought it made my baby face look even rounder. I observed Connie Bennett's svelte figure and started dancing harder than ever and dieting like mad to lose weight. I ate crackers and mustard, drank gallons of black coffee. Totally absorbed in the picture, I didn't even know when I was hungry. The only one of us with any assurance before the camera was Constance Bennett, who'd had stage experience. Willie Haynes, who played Sally O'Neill's sweetheart, took his lead with easy philosophy. He thought we were getting paid to have a good time. But to me, each moment was deadly serious. I remember working myself up for one big emotional scene, and how, at the last minute, Johnny Arnold left his camera and took me aside. He said, "Pretend that the news you hear in this scene concerns someone close to you, and you've just heard it for the first time. No matter how many times you've rehearsed it, hear it now for the first time." We didn't have time for costume tests or makeup tests. We made 6 or 8 pictures a year, and I studied my script in a concentrated panic for Sally, Irene, and Mary. Or no, that 6-month clause was still staring me in the face. There wasn't a peaceful moment until the studio renewed my option on the first day of July and raised my salary to $100 a week.
Without any call for histrionics, Constance Bennett, Joan Crawford, and Sally O'Neill in the title roles played with a polish to their performances that usually takes more years of experience to acquire than any of the 3 possess.